Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Capital Region eWIB's virtual workshop series on personal branding for board candidates, presented by Kelly Huang. I'm Neo Gamo. I'm the chair of the eWIB committee, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we get into this session, I'd like to give an overview of Women in Bio and the Capital Region chapter. And I'm trying to advance the slide. There we go. Women in Bio is an organization of professionals committed to promoting careers, leadership, and entrepreneurship for all women in the life sciences. WIB was founded in 2002, and the Capital Region chapter was founded in 2011, originally as the national headquarters of Women in Bio. Women in Bio provides a continuity of support from classroom to boardroom, academia to industry, first job to last, and idea to entrepreneur. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, Kelly Huang and Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey. Kelly is an executive leadership coach with over 20 years of experience in teaching, B2B marketing, and management consulting. She started her board journey back in 2006 when she joined a 4-person mutual fund board, and she's currently serving on the scientific advisory board for Eagle Genomics in the UK. She has also served as the co-chair for Women in Bio's Boardroom Ready program in 2019. While she continues to advocate for gender equity and boardroom diversity, she's active in contributing to the Forbes Coaching Council and teaching at UCSD. Clarissa is an award-winning transformational coach for creatives, authors, and abstract artists. A trained organizational psychologist from the California School of Professional Psychology, Clarissa is fascinated by the people that continue to bring their dreams and goals to reality, no matter their circumstances. Over her multi-decade career, Clarissa has worked with hundreds of leaders and teams in various industries like healthcare, HR consulting, food and beverage, and retail, and at the intersection of leadership development, creativity, and wellness. Clarissa has helped thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs experience their own breakthroughs, guiding them to design their next chapter outside corporate. This is the second of 5 virtual sessions, with each session consisting of a group session followed by breakout session. While the group sessions are open to all, if you'd like to attend the breakout sessions, please commit to attending at least 4 out of the 5 sessions. And now I will hand it over to Kelly.
Thank you, Now, for that great introduction, and thank you, Clarissa, for joining us. So this is the second session of the 5 workshop series on personal branding. So even though in the first session, I really focus on the information on the board journey, in fact, this is a process I've done with many of my career transition coachees. So it is applicable whether you're trying to look for a promotion or looking for the next role. So it's not just for the board journey, right? And then secondarily, I want to thank the eWIB leaders for giving me this opportunity to share the stage with Clarissa to talk about personal branding. And housekeeping wise, I want to make sure that you know that I'm going to take questions throughout the presentation, but on the chat, feel free to type in the questions as they come to you, because I think Kelly's going to capture that for us, so we can be sure to answer that. And also Clarissa is going to present first, and she does need to go at some point. So I'll make sure that whatever questions you have for her, we'll get those answers back to you by our next session. And also in terms of breakouts, we have one on the homework. And don't worry if you haven't done it or you're just in the process of still working on it. The breakout will be more about talking through the process of coming up with your values, right? And how did everybody go about doing it? And then the second breakout, we're going to do something called the 100 jobs exercise. And again, we're not trying to do it right here, but it's more about talking about what you want to get out of doing it. And so the results is what I'm after. And then let's see. Oh, for accessibility reasons, I'm going to turn on the captions. So I know that's going to show up on your screen, but I think that's going to help all of us here. So let's see. Let me make sure the captions thing is there. Show captions in English. Okay. And so next. So back to how, oh, sorry, next slide. I'm advancing the slides, but actually it should be now, right? So you can all see it. There it is. So back to how we got started, right? There's the whole personal branding 5-step process that I introduced last time. And the reason why I started with align, which is define your North Star, right? I heard 2 great stories on this recently with a bunch of women who are either already on boards or seeking to get on to a board seat. And so the first woman talked about how she came across an opportunity to be on a tobacco board. And even though, it was with people she knew, it was a big company, it was all very exciting, but she couldn't stomach the fact she had to tell her dad that she's serving on a tobacco board. And so that gets back to our values, right? Until we're clear on what our internal values are, you're going to hit some of those, decision points, right? And so good for her. She figured out, like, if I can't even tell my dad, this is not the role for me, right? You don't want to go through all those interviews only to have to say no, right? At the end, you should be clear on that. The second story I heard is this woman knows, actually went through all the interviews. It was a 4-month selection process. And she was this great executives coming onto a board that was, very much in favor of her as a candidate. But guess what? She didn't like her job. So because she took on a new job, the new CEO was not on board with her board candidacy and she had to resign and everybody's upset. And she will not work with that company or that search firm again, right? So back to why it's so important when we're aligned with our values and what we want out of this board journey, right? You don't want to be in the situation where you go to other interviews only to say, value-wise, oh, this doesn't connect with me, right? Or you go to other interviews only to realize, oh, my operator role is in conflict with what this board is doing. So that's why we do that step, right? It's very important. Okay, so today we're on to the ambition, right? Defining your ambition. And I know it's a very kind of nebulous thing. But again, truth be told, one of the best professors I worked with in terms of talking about career transition is Hermina Ibarra out of INSEAD. And she talks about how your strategic career transitions is all about figuring out your future selves and not just one. There are many versions, right? And that's why I'm so glad Clarissa is here, because she's really an expert on how to think about all those possibilities and how to fully manifest. So let me get to her introduction. And I know now already gave one, but I just want to give a quick story on how we met. So we're both part of the Asian Women's Coaching Collective. And then when I was thinking about, next slide. So when I was thinking about, like, who's the best person I know to talk about visioning and being expansive and, being a career pivoter, I couldn't think of a better person than Carissa. So let me hand it over to her and let her tell you her story and her personal transformation.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Before I get started, I just want to share something really quick. I'm working through a vocal condition called spasmodic dysphonia, so my voice comes in and out. So, Kelly, thank you for turning on the captions. So I love visioning, and I think it's partly because I'm an artist. And one of the tips I'm going to share is that we typically have a vivid imagination, and that is where everything begins. So I love that Kelly is taking you through this process, and what I want to share with you is just a little bit of my transformation doing this work. So every year for the last 20 years, probably, I have put a vision board together. And to me, it's a creative way to goal set, and it's a fun way to goal set. And the things that I have put on my board have come to life, like the house that I'm living in, my wedding, my dream career, my past career in corporate, and my entrepreneurial journey. So those are the milestones that I have put on my board, which have come to life. Okay, next slide. And I just want to put this out there. I think the real reason visions and goals and purpose doesn't fully become a reality is because on some level, there's a belief that it might not be possible, right? It's sometimes hard to imagine being in a position that you want to be when you've never been in it, right? So, next slide, please. Maybe I'm curious, have you ever thought, can I really do this? I'm not an expert, or I'm not the expert I think I ought to be to go for this position. Or maybe you're telling yourself, oh my gosh, I need more training, or I don't know the right people. So I'm just curious, have any of you ever had any of those thoughts? I'll be the first to raise my hand. And maybe just drop a 1 in the chat if you can relate to what I'm saying. Thank you. Yep. Okay, you're picking up what I'm laying down. Thanks, everybody. So, and this is normal, right? And you can go to the next slide. So these are the 5 tips, strategies, tools that can help you bring your vision to life. And the first one is imagination. And you can forward to the next slide. So I won't read this slide to you, but logic and reasoning can only get us so far when we're in that need to be in that dream state, because the brain doesn't know what is necessarily reality and what's not. So that's why we start here by using your imagination to picture yourself where you would like to be is already starting to fire those brain neurons to create that path for you, right? And what you can do to for this portion is create a mental movie. So what do I mean by that? If you carve out, let's say 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long you can, and just get into a quiet space and close your eyes and take a deep breath and just allow yourself to have fun. That's where we have to start. We have to tune into that inner child where anything was possible and just see what comes up for you and use your 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? Can you smell anything? Can you taste anything? Is there anything that you can touch? And who is with you? So you can give yourself some time just to imagine. And if you're not a visual person like I am, you can journal, and maybe writing it down is a better process for you. And just give yourself the freedom, the space. Put that inner critic that I know we all have, just put that person to the side and let your inner child come through. And so that is where we start with imagination. And if you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat. And we can move on if there's no questions. Okay, the second tip is to pay attention to your focus and attention. You may have heard this before, where your attention goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, something grows. And that can work for you or against you. And I want to share an example with you. a personal example. I've got a couple, but the one that comes to my mind is a few years ago, I really wanted to improve my financial acumen. I'm transitioning to be my own boss, and honestly, like math was not my favorite subject, and like finances and money and math was just a little bit elusive to me, if I'm being honest. And so I set a goal, and I didn't even share this with anybody, but on my vision board was to be more financially savvy. And it was just so interesting. I started just noticing and paying attention to the people I was meeting. And so many of them were women in finance. And simply by putting my attention to that goal, I noticed that, oh, I have access to to these different women that I can learn from. And so I did. And another example that I'd like to share is, have you ever bought a new car or wanted to buy a new car? And you're like, oh, I don't really, maybe you hadn't ever seen that particular car on the street. Like for me, I wanted to get a Kia Telluride and didn't see it on the street before I declared that I wanted to purchase this car. As soon as I told my husband, hey, maybe we should look into getting this car for our next car, I started seeing that car everywhere. And so what you pay attention to really shows up in your life. So my question for you is, what are you putting your focus and attention on, and being committed to your vision and purpose? So just something for you to think about. Okay, next one is also paying attention to how you feel, because that is also a guiding system for you. And I'm not going to read all the prompts up here, but as you think about your vision and your purpose, you know, what's coming up for you? How are you feeling? I loved the example that Kelly shared with the person who got the opportunity to be on a tobacco board. And I'm guessing that just it didn't feel good. It wasn't in alignment with her. And so therefore didn't feel right to take it. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, is to just pay attention to what lights you up. And on the flip side, what kind of turns you off, and knowing those two buckets. But sometimes we're just afraid. And so I also want you to think about the times where you really wanted to do something. Maybe you felt a little bit afraid, and to remember what that kind of feels like in your body. Because that is information that helps you make adjustments, or just tells you, you know what, I know this feeling. It's just me being a little bit afraid because I'm getting into new territory. So I hope that makes sense. And also pay attention to how you're feeling throughout the day. For me, I'm typically best in the morning. So all the things that are tied to my vision and my goal, I make sure that I can do at least one thing to move forward. And it's better for me to just get it out of the way, because as the day goes on, my energy starts to go down. But for you, maybe you're a night owl. Maybe that's a better time for you to carve out some quiet time for yourself to focus on your purpose, your vision. So just something to pay attention to. We can go to the next slide. And this is the fourth step, or the fourth tool, is inspired action. So simply dreaming, simply imagining is not going to cut it, but it is a great place to start. An inspired action is the making of all the things that you imagined and bringing it to life. And when you're putting your attention on the direction you want to go in, you're feeling good about it. You have it might not be crystal clear, but you have a picture of where you want to go. Then it becomes a little easier to take that next step because you're just feeling in full alignment. And so the prompt here is just to identify one small, tangible step that you can take today that aligns with your purpose. And maybe it's doing research. Maybe it's connecting with a colleague. Maybe it's creating a cover letter for the next board that you want to apply to. So what is one small thing that you can do every day? We can go to the next slide. And last but not least, having a growth mindset. And I'm just curious how many of you have read Dr. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. If you could just drop a 1 in the chat if you've read it. And it's okay if you haven't, but I highly recommend it. I think it's such a great book. And basically, the growth mindset, for those of you who haven't read it, it says, and it's on this slide, is that people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. And I love what Dr. Carol Dweck says. Sometimes our mind can just chit chatter with us and hold us down. And a great way to reframe that, those limiting beliefs, is to tell yourself, I'm on this journey and I'm not there yet. And that word yet, I think, is so powerful because it just reminds us that we're all a work in progress. And it's not even about the destination, but that journey of transformation that we get to have. And so my last prompt for you today is just to consider a recent challenge that you had. And how did you approach it? Was it with a fixed mindset, which basically says, oh, well, this is who I am. I can't do anything about it. And I guess I just need to move on. Or more growth oriented and just knowing that this is temporary, because the reality is we're all going to be faced with challenges along our life's journey. So how can you cultivate a growth mindset and view challenges as opportunities for development in the context of your purpose? So just something for you to think about.
So Clarissa, I have a story on that.
Yes.
I've taken on snowboarding at the age of 30.
Nice.
So I am definitely not the best boarder on the mountain, but I remember the fear was always about falling, like, oh, I don't want to fall, right? And that was stopping me from getting better. And so eventually, with the whole kind of growth mindset way, I started telling myself, what's so bad about falling? Everybody falls. Every snowboarder will tell you they are. In fact, the bigger the fault, the more there's a better story to tell. And so the inspire action for me was to just say, I'm not trying to be the best snowboarder. In fact, my top speed is 8 miles per hour. Some of you can walk faster, but it's the fact I just see it as a process. Like, I don't have to be the best one. but I just want to be getting better. And
That's
that
right.
actually lends itself to everything else that I do in terms of learning.
I love it. And and I'm sure you've heard this before, but I'm just gonna say it because it popped into my head. But the word fail, first attempt in learning. That's how I see failure now. It used to be so I don't want to fail at anything. And I just had to remind myself it's a first attempt in learning. That's it. All right, you can go to the next slide. So just to recap, we talked about getting in tune with your inner child and using your imagination to create the vision that you want for yourself this year. And paying attention to where does the mind go? Where do the thoughts go? Are you focusing it on what you're after? Because that's where the energy goes, and that's where the synchronicities happen, is when we're in alignment and thinking good thoughts about where we're headed. And then feelings come into place, because when you think certain thoughts, that'll impact how you feel, right? So recognizing the good feelings to take you closer to where you want to go, and inspired action is really what it's all about. It's that making of your imagination. And lastly, to have that growth mindset and just know that with enough effort and time and proper feedback, you will get to wherever you want to go. You can go to the next slide. And this is just information. If you'd like to connect, I do have a podcast called Painting Your Path. I'm on Instagram at that handle. And I also have a private Facebook community called Painting Your Path.
So Clarissa, do you want to take some questions now?
Sure. Yeah. If anybody has
Stop for
questions.
questions. Or comments.
Yeah, or just to take away. I'd love to hear
Yeah, feel free
what your
to
thoughts are.
quickly jump in with any questions before Clarissa has to go.
This is Carla Rampey. Sorry, I can't
Hi.
show my face because
That's
I'm
okay.
like, I literally been working since 3 a.m. But talk
Oh.
about burnout. But no, I really appreciate this. I think this was great. I don't have any questions other than the fact that the first one, I really loved imagination, because I feel like
Yes.
that kind of ties into what's the word? Manifestation.
Yes.
Sort of like when you imagine where you're going to be. And like right now, I have a really big proposal I'm writing and it's due tomorrow. And I'm just kind of imagining, okay, if we win this, this would be so great. It's such a great opportunity, but also just in general, it's just a great opportunity just to learn and grow. And I feel like you kind of manifest, like I've been working on this proposal for 2 weeks, but you're kind of manifesting where you want to be, and you're imagining what you see yourself in the outcome. And I feel like it really does help with just providing more encouragement for your team and also for yourself, and just keeps you really positive in life. So I really like that. I think that I need to remind myself kind of like every day when you wake up, like imagine what you want your day to be, that particular day, and then see how that works, and do it every day and see if that works for you in terms of setting goals daily, but also setting goals long term. So yeah, I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, imagination I think it's the most powerful tool, and one that adults could probably build that muscle again.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's one thing that no one can take away from you.
Yeah.
Right? You can imagine, anything, right? I tell my girls this all the time. They're 8 and 5, and I'm like, imagine what, where you're going to be, what you're doing. Like, you can never take anyone's imagination away. And I feel like that's where it starts, is that you dream, you imagine. But I think imagining it is a step forward, because it's more like you really do manifest it when you dream, when you imagine it. So yeah, I really, I appreciate that, but thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else, any comments or questions?
Hi, this is Michelle Wales.
Hi.
The other book that I've read that sounds very similar to this is Atomic Habits.
Yes, James
And
Clear.
I actually had never really thought about changing. One of my goals is also to build a house. And to get there, I would like to have, to get there, I would like to, be able to be in a position where I can pay down a lot of it. And the atomic habit that I implemented is, hey, every day I want to make sure I can bill 2 or 3 hours so that, it's a little bit, but if that's my goal for the day, I know that in the end, it will also go and, go towards my end goal. But again, it's the little things that I can do on a
Yes.
daily basis that will get me to my goal. Over.
Yes, right. That growth mindset, that inspired action that you're doing. And I love his book too. It's been a game changer for me. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I think, Clarissa, if there aren't any questions, I'll be sure to capture those so that I'll get those answers back to our attendees. But thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And it really is inspiring for me, knowing your personal story and also how to, like you said, capture that genie in a bottle. And we all have it, right? Those inner
do.
child, that gifts and that imagination are all within us. So thank you for reminding
Yes.
us to continue to tap into that.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me and have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Clarissa.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, now we'll go to the next slide. So the breakout's coming up. So I'm just gonna do a little prep in terms of how to get you ready for that. So again, for those of you that attended last session, and don't worry if you haven't, we started out with how we look at personal branding, right? And remember what I said was that it's a set of impressions and it's a noun first, right? Personal brand is the impressions and the reputations that you already have out there. So like it or not, it is, right? We already have one. However, the key here is that we have the opportunity to reinvent it, to revamp it, and to put forth like a set of, actions, right? Using our imagination, think about our North Star to start to create it in a way that makes sense to us. So instead of somebody filling in the blanks and using gender bias or stereotypes to put you into a box, you can intentionally, right, bring this version of all of your future selves into reality. So next slide. So again, at the last session, I used this North Star compass analogy. So without getting into my own values wheel again, the idea is that I found a way to figure out these quadrants, right? So as you go into your breakout room, see if you can start to make sense of the different values you put onto your wheels. So in the case of the exercise I went through for myself, I found that, the how I make a difference is that northwest quadrant. And then my strength is, northeast, northwest, yeah. So how I make a difference is that first quadrant, right, on the upper left, and then the strengths are on the upper right, and then my passions, right, are on the lower right, and then my cultural identity and heritage is on the lower left. So I think when you think about your values wheel, not only capture the individual values that you saw in yourself, but see if you can make sense of, if there are any themes, right, in these quadrants to better make sense of, okay, this is how I can categorize, right, what I'm about. So try to see if you can do that as you go into the breakout room. So next slide. So in the breakout room, I think I can share this slide while everybody's in breakout, right? So, and then don't worry if you haven't done it. I'd like you guys to, again, discuss your process. So how did you go about doing the value capture, right? How did you do it? And share, your process with everybody. And then make sure to assign somebody in the room to discuss what your group's, ahas or themes. And then we'll come back in about 15 minutes. So let's see, at 12:50, does that make sense? 12:55, we'll come back and do about 5 minutes of debrief. So yes, so that's have everybody go into your various breakout rooms, and then we'll come back in 15. And I'll see if I can project some of these slides into your rooms.
Yes, thanks, Kelly. So we'll now go into a few breakout rooms. So we are going to stop recording at this point. Let me stop the recording.